going to fill you in on what's going on with this bills project we're going to be doing. The idea is just to give you guys a little bit of some exposure to some real world financial things. So this one's literally just looking through a series of electric bills and a series of gas bills, and then just answering questions, identifying some parts that are on there, and then there is some ties to some functions and graphing too. That's how it kind of relates to this chapter, but a lot of it is just to give you some exposure to this, because many of you in the next year or two or three are going to be heading off and living on your own for the first time in an apartment or condo or something like that, maybe a dorm. So anyway, first couple of questions are just like looking at the bill, identifying the company that provides the electricity and what units they measured in, what company provides the gas, and what units they measured in. The gas company is a little bit harder to figure out who the company is. It's not like stamped with a big logo in the upper left-hand corner. But if you look in the description, they kind of talk about Minnesota something resources, that area, that is the company name. But then you're just looking through, make sure you pay attention to the difference between a billing date and a statement date, or excuse me, a statement date or a due date. On the gas bills, they call it a billing date and a due date. We're mostly going to use the statement date or the billing date and not the due date. One of the areas that causes some concern and where questions have come up in class is when you get down to this part, they're going to have you go to the September of 2014 bill. They're going to have you look at the total, and the total here does not match like the amount that's billed total. They're way different. And so then this question asks, what three charges are included in that amount due? And a lot of people, I think, look too specific and they're trying to like dig up some of these things. But what it really boils down to is, here's the total for the current month. They added on $1.32 as a late charge. And that's kind of the key where the rest of it comes from. Because that's still only, what, $88.43. And the total amount due was $176. So the third item, we have the current charges, the late fee. The third item is really the total from the month before. The reason there were late charges is because they never paid last month's bill, and when they sent out the new one, they still included that because the other one hadn't been paid yet. And then the sheet asks you to find another place where it happened. All you really need to do is look for the other one that has a late charge assessed. So that's kind of one trouble spot that people have that I pointed out and kind of warned people of. For this CR, if you can't figure it out or find it on the bill, just try Googling bills in CR, and that should help you figure out that. As far as the cost of the month and why it's a function and inputs and outputs, in a graph in algebra, when you wanted to determine if something's a function, we use the vertical line test. And what the vertical line test does is it says that if a vertical line crosses the graph more than once, then it's not a function. The reason that happens is because for one input, one x coordinate, there would be two outputs, two y coordinates. If that happens, then it's not a function. The cost of bills is a function because in our graph, the input that we're looking at is really the month that the bill came. Now, I know it's based on how much electricity or gas they used, but in terms of how we're going to graph it, it's really the month that we're using and the month and year that we're using. So for every month, there's only one bill. They don't send you two different bills for the same month. So that's kind of what they're driving at there. And then we get to the graph. We want to graph both gas and electric. Use a different color for each, or if you don't have multiple colors, you could just use like little X's for one and dots for the other. And then one other thing to point out, when you look at the bills, the statement date has month, day, and year like we're used to for date. This is just the month and the year, because that's all we really care about is going from month to month. So the very first bill, the statement date is June 16th of 2014. That's really where we're graphing the x-coordinate of 6/14, because it's June of 2014. And then the bills are in order, so you should just be able to generally scroll through and graph June, then July, then August. The amount on here is very specific. It's $55.46. When you plot it on here, it's fine to just put it roughly between 50 and 60. It doesn't need to be exactly super precise. But make sure you're using the statement date. And the one other thing it said is make sure to adjust the months that had late payments. This month that we were looking at a minute ago, what they mean by adjust is if you see one where there was a late charge, and there's only two. There's two in the electric and that's it. Don't graph this when you're doing the September of 2014 one. Graph this number minus that previous month, because we're already going to graph that one in there. We want to subtract that amount from here before we graph this September one, and then do that for the one other bill that's kind of like doubled up. But that's it. That's the main idea with this. Do the best you can. Finish. Send questions if you have them. Next week, we're going to do an activity that works off of this. You're going to actually use your graph and answer some other questions, and there's a part two to the bills thing altogether. So if we can get this done for next week, that would be best. Have a great rest of your day.